Are you now, or have you ever been, a threat to the empire? This is always the key question that the powers of be care to ask of anyone who is popular, anyone who has informal authority, and especially any prophet in any age. Are you now, or have you ever been, a threat to the empire? Whether it calls itself empire or not, whether we are talking about someone like Martin Luther King, Oscar Romero, Galileo, Jesus of Nazareth, are you now, or have you ever been, a threat to the empire? And soon we will hear Jesus say, "You say I am. You say I am." In September of 2017, I found myself, for the first time since I had moved to St. Louis, joining it was not the first protest I had been in the streets, but it was the first one that didn't have a permit and didn't have a clear endpoint and was in response to a clear and present incident. The police had shot an unarmed black man and had been tried and not found guilty. And so there were protests. And I remember, it's probably the only Facebook post that I've ever written where I actually remember what I wrote some years later. But I remember at the end of the day, after about 6 or 8 hours out in the streets, I remember writing as my post for that night, "Whatever you are seeing on the news, already the reports that people are texting me of what they are seeing do not match what we are seeing on the ground. Ask questions of any story that is being sold to you if it does not match the story that is being lived." There were plenty of journalists who were on the ground with us and were in fact trying to report what was on the ground. And that was one of the earlier protests where journalists were particularly unsafe in doing that within the last several years. But most of what made national news was not reported from on the ground. What was reported did not match the story on the ground. It's the same as the story that Oscar Romero used to say when the government would ask him, "Are you a threat?" or would say, "You are a threat." He would say, "I have not made a threat. You have called me a threat. You have in turn threatened me." He said, "I need to say that as a Christian, I do not believe in death without resurrection. And so if they kill me, I will rise again in the people of El Salvador. If they manage to carry out their threats right here, right now, I offer my blood for the redemption and resurrection of El Salvador. A bishop may die, but the church of God, which is in the people, will never die." Over and over again throughout history, we've seen that the story that is told by those who want to control the story often does not match the story as it is lived out. I want to invite you to notice how it is this story that we enter into this week that is the one that shapes Romero's response, that is the one that has led so many of us into the streets in the first place, that it is in following Jesus into this story that many of us have had our lives changed in ways we never expected. And it is this story that the forces of empire, whether in El Salvador or the US or Rome or Palestine or wherever, want to control wherever they find it. Because the story of a love so strong as this, when they try to stop it, even the ground cries out in witness of it. If you have ever stood in a place that has been a place of martyrdom, You can feel, you can sense the ground crying out in witness of what has really happened there. But when the powers of be tell the story, they tell their own story. And so the story gets twisted and misreported, even and especially this most holy story. So that this story of life for all people, this story of a Jewish man in his own community, becomes a story of scapegoating Jews. It becomes a story about Jews killing Jesus, or people killing Jesus, but the ones who repented are the ones who became Christians, so those are the good ones, and the ones who didn't are the ones who are still Jews, and so those are the bad ones still. Or that Jews were greedy, or that Jews were rebels, or that Jews were collaborators. I invite you to notice this week, today, as we hear a version of this story that comes largely from Luke, Friday, as we hear a version of this story that comes from John's Gospel, how Jesus' own people are reported in this story. I invite you to wonder why Jesus' own people are reported this way. Many of the reasons that the story has been told the way it has been told, both in the Bible itself and certainly since then, have to do with who is in control, who wants to be in control, and who is afraid of not being in control of the story. See where the story that is being told matches the rest of the story of Jesus, and where it seems not to match. Wonder about that. Get curious. The story that has been sold to us about the role of the Jewish people in the death of Jesus does not match the story that has been lived. The Jewish people, as a people, first of all, are like any other people and have never agreed on one thing altogether. And the Jewish people have never ever been a threat to Christians or Christianity. They have never had sufficient power to do so. It is Christianity, too often, that has been a threat to Jewishness and Jewish people and Jewish life. This is part of the story that we have to own in this holiest of weeks, in this holiest of stories. A story that is about life and about love, and yet we as Christians have a heritage of twisting to become a story about why we should be in control. Jesus was killed by the state on an instrument of state execution that nobody but the state had the authority to use to kill people. Jesus was not killed by the popular masses of any group, Jewish or Gentile. The popular masses did not have that power. They could have trampled him or something like that, but that's not what happened. That's not the story. Jesus was executed by the state in collaboration with religious leaders concerned about controlling the story as well. How this story gets reported matters. And how it is reported to be reported matters. Jesus frightens and frustrates Judas and Pilate and the religious leaders because he is not interested in fitting into the story they want him to tell. He insists on telling only the story he came to tell, the story of love stronger than death, a story that frightens the empire not by overthrowing it with swords, but by refusing to go away. Jesus enters Jerusalem in the parade of palms, hailed as a king, yes, but as a king of love. He is indeed a threat to the empire, but not because he is there to kill the emperor. He is a threat because he doesn't have to kill anyone to overcome the power of the empire. This is a protest story, but not in the way that Pilate thinks. It is a protest against the powers of its day and against so much more than just a political regime. It is a protest against the oppressive powers of an empire of death in every form, in every age. And we will walk it this week with Jesus. And as we do, there's a song that we will use to accompany us, to accompany Jesus on this walk, starting today, again on Maundy Thursday, again on Good Friday. And we're going to learn it now. It is a song, the words are later in your bulletin. I'm not looking so I don't see the page number. But mostly you won't need to look at them. You can just listen as Kendall teaches it. It's a song that comes from South Africa during the anti-apartheid protests. It's a song that was sung by protesters as protesters were arrested and taken off to jail. And it's a song that was reported to be sung then also in the prisons as death row prisoners were led to their deaths. It's a song of accompaniment. Let's go ahead and learn it now.
So this is mostly a call and response song, so I'll say the line and you guys repeat it after me. But the last line of every phrase we sing together, which I think you'll understand once we get it going. So it goes like this. Courage, try that.
Courage,
My friend, and then together we sing, you do not walk alone. You do not walk alone. So that's the melody for the whole thing. So it repeats again here. We will walk with you, and sing your spirit home. Can we try it all together here? Courage, my friend, you do not walk alone. We will walk with you and sing your spirit home. Cool. One more time. Courage, my friend, you do not walk alone. We will walk with you and sing your spirit home.
Home gospel and sermon bookended, and then we will use this song to lead us into the next part of the story. But I want to invite you as we go through this week to hold in one hand the song that led us into the gospel and the sermon. Listen, listen, listen. Listen even when you don't understand. And then in the other hand, courage, my friend. You do not walk alone. We will walk with you and sing your spirit home. Listen, notice, wonder, walk with Jesus. See what happens next. Amen.